If your life were a movie, what would the title be?
Maybe a curious, the curious case of curiosity, maybe.
Okay, explain that a little bit.
It probably didn't make any sense, but I'm trying to think. Maybe because I've always been curious about a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of helped me, lead to somewhere where I wanted to be. Because
Mm-hmm.
being curious about politics, it kind of led me to, oh, maybe I wanted that as a career, or being curious about art and delving into that a lot more. It also led me to important topics like arts advocacy and arts education, the importance of that, and how that kind of fused together with politics. But I think, yeah, that's probably what the movie title would be.
It's Coach D here. I'm a post-secondary and workforce readiness coach, author, and speaker. And I'm empowering educators, inspiring students, and transforming schools one conversation at a time. Welcome to Coach D Wants to Know, the podcast where we dive deep into all things post-secondary success. Whether it's career readiness through college, trade schools, the military, apprenticeships, or entrepreneurships, we're talking about it. This podcast is for school leaders, counselors, business owners, parents, and students who want to explore every opportunity behind high school. Because when we know better, we guide better. So let's jump in and uncover the possibilities together because Coach D wants to know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Coach D Wants to Know. Today, I am super excited to have my guest on this super senior series, and her name is Aubrey Jordan-Yarbrough. And I'm going to let her introduce herself a little bit in just a second and tell a little bit about herself before we go in depth with who Aubrey really is. But again, I just want to welcome you all to another episode. I am having an amazing time interviewing seniors and letting them tell their story of how they navigated the waters of high school for 4 years, came out successful. I'm giving them the opportunity to talk back to those who are now following behind them and give them advice and strategies. This show is for teachers, it's for parents, it's for students, it's for counselors, it's for any educator who has the ear of a high schooler. So please tune in, please like it, please share it, please send it out. And if you know any other super seniors you would like for me to interview, please send me a DM, get in touch with me, and we will definitely get them on this show. So without further ado, let's make sure we get all of the information we can from Miss Aubrey Jordan-Yarbrough. So would you tell us a little bit about you, where you graduated from, where you're going after high school and things like that? So you're going to NCAT, right?
Yes.
So why did you choose NCAT, and how did you go through the process of narrowing down that selection to really just choose NCAT was going to be the place where you were going to land for 4 years?
Yes. So, I had a couple of family members attend NCAT before me. So my great grandfather attended NCAT and my cousin. And so they both really enjoyed the school. And then I just kept hearing about this school overall, whether that be on social media, the internet, or just from family friends. And so as senior year approached, I began to do more research about the school, specifically pertaining to my major, political science. And, while researching, I saw they had a lot of great opportunities for students, whether that be through internships or job opportunities after you leave college. And the professors they had were had amazing credentials. So, looking at that, the academic part and everything, but also NCAT's community is very welcoming and inviting, especially to all the students. They have a great alumni, reach out committee, and they also are known for their homecoming. So I'm excited to attend, the greatest homecoming on earth this fall. But NCAT was a great school that I've been looking at. But I've also looked at other schools, schools like Emory University, Howard University, Hampton University, just schools within the area, specifically in the South, but
Mhm.
somewhere that was far enough, but also in enough reach where if something were to happen, I could still get to my parents in enough time.
Right. And that's very important. I always talk about the kids. It seems like at the beginning of the end of June, junior year, beginning of senior year, they're always like, I want to go as far away as possible. That's what's in their mindset. And I'm always telling them, you got to think about this, because if something goes on, you want your parents to be able to get to you, or if something is happening at home, you want to be able to get there too. So I get it. You're trying to establish the independence, but don't go, too far. Don't get too extreme with this. So it sounds like you did a really good, thorough process, and you've really landed where you're going to, where you can see yourself thriving for 4 years. So you talked about political science. What exactly about political science appeals to you, and what do you plan to do with that degree?
Yes, so I'll be majoring in political science, but on a pre-law track. So I plan to go to law school afterwards. I'm thinking of becoming a prosecutor, hopefully a future senator. But I've always been interested in politics. It probably started around my when I was in 4th grade, because that was when the 2016 election happened. And that's when a lot of like myself and a lot of my peers were exposed to like how politics actually affect us and like our families. So, after that time, I was just very, you know, interested in how like political processes work and how that affects people, regular people, everyday people. But then also, going through middle and high school, I attended an performing arts high school. And so during that time, I saw how the arts weren't as valued in our school district, compared to some of the sports programs at other schools. And that also affected the funding we received. And so I did a lot of research, or I became more involved in how we could advocate for arts programs, and that how, government policies actually affect that and how much money we receive. And so, looking at the different processes of how government plays a part in, our everyday lives made me a lot more interested in the process. And I was like, okay, maybe I want to do this for a career. So
I love that. Amazing. Um, what's one thing people are always surprised to learn about you, Aubrey?
that probably that I'm an artist, because
Artist.
I'm always talking about law and government, and then people are like, "You also do art?" And then I also play the violin, so they're like, "Oh wow."
Oh, I love that. What type of art are you interested in, or art do you create?
Um, Anything. Portraits, painting, drawing. I can do, whatever somebody wants, I can do it.
That is amazing. So you're just talented all across the board. That's so amazing. I am so excited for what you're going to bring to NCAT, what you're going to bring to the world after that. So again, I tell everybody when they listen to these podcasts, please keep an eye out. Please keep an ear out. These kids are amazing. And again, it's one of those reasons it drives me to do this series over the summer is, again, 100% of the kids are not on the wrong path. But if you listen to the news, or if you pay attention to social media, it would seem as though it's like 100% of the kids out here are just not doing the right thing. When in fact, it might be 10% of those kids that just get the most publicity, they get the most press, they get the most likes, the most shares, the most views. And again, to me, it's very important that I showcase the 90%. The 90% who are doing what they're supposed to do, who are thriving to make this world a better place. And so again, it just gives me joy to do these interviews, to talk to young people just like you. So I am so proud of you. Keep going, and trust me, I will do everything I can to make connections for you with people that I know, because that's what it's about, for you all to build those real relationships, for people who can open doors for you. So keep going, keep going, keep going.
Thank you.
I heard you got a best friend that's leaving tomorrow as well.
Yes.
So if your best friend was talking to me about you right now, what 3 words would she use to describe you?
Probably organized, overworked, and maybe Kind.
Kind. So why would she call you overworked?
Because I'm always working.
Always working.
Yes, especially throughout the school year. Um, I was in almost every club you could think of. I'm always doing homework. I'm always studying for a test. And
Mhm.
like your friends are like, "Oh, girl, come to this party." Ooh, no, I gotta study for that test tomorrow. So, you know, that's probably why she would say that.
So how did you balance that out? Because that is very important, especially with the career that you intend to have, the schools that you wanted to get accepted to. There has to be that balance. So and like you said, you were heavily involved in extracurriculars, anything that was going on at the school. How did you find that proper balance? Because that's one of the things that I have, I guess, the most difficulty convincing my students to make sure that you are involved and you're involved in activities that are going to make, number one, your scholarship applications look really, really good. Your college applications, you have something to say in that essay. The people who write your letters of recommendation can vouch for you and prove everything that you put in that application. So how do you balance that and still be, this well-rounded young lady who is kind, and like she said as well? How do you keep all of that in balance?
Ooh, that was definitely a hard lesson for me to learn. I would say most likely throughout junior year, because I was trying to do everything at one time, and once you get overworked, your body, your health starts to go with it. So um, I had to learn how to take time out for myself to say like, okay, it's time to take a break. It's okay, you don't have to finish all of this work at this one particular time, but also you can also lean on others to help you, because I'm the type of person, if it's on my mind, I'm going to get it done even though I have other people who could probably do it for me. I choose to do it myself because I just don't feel like taking the time to go ask somebody else. So I think learning and knowing how to lean on others for help, but also knowing your limit and taking time out to focus on like your health and something that you want to do, because it's always helpful to take a break, to relax a little bit, and then go back to what you were doing before.
And I'm glad you found that out. Like you said, junior year, you were able to work at it more senior year, and you're doing these things in a controlled environment where you have support, where you have people that were helping to nurture you and guide you through. And that's great. So that when you do go out there and you don't have those people really telling you, okay, you got to shut it down, whatever, but you know already internally where your limits are, and you're making sure that you do that, because college is going to add more layers on. And so again, for you to know that early on, you already have those tools and those strategies and the resources that you need to make sure you are not overloading yourself. You do enjoy some college life, but you do have a great balance, and you create your boundaries so that you go and get out in 4. You get that bachelor's in 4.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. Get that bachelor's in 4. Let's see. Is there any kind of quote or motto or like a mindset mantra or that you live by, and if so, where did it come from? How did you develop that and kind of sort of internalize that and use that to drive your mindset every day?
I used this for my senior quote. I'm trying to remember who it was by. It's by a famous Black leader, and it slips my mind, and I feel so bad. And I'm trying to think, but it's around the lines of, you kind of set your standards for people, how you set your standards in a way where this is how you want people to treat you,
Mm-hmm.
and you treat them the same way. So kind of along the lines of the saying, treat people how you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout high school, I went to a high school where um it was predominantly white teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and you know during that time, they how microaggressions can sometimes happen, and you're trying to figure out, as a young Black girl, you're like, okay, wait, that didn't sound right. let
Right.
me let me go back. But there were a couple of instances where I had to go in my mind and say, how do I stand up for myself in a way that is respectful, but also letting you know that wasn't okay for you to say.
Mhm.
And I hope you don't say that again to at least anybody else. But that kind of stuck with me. But it goes beyond a race point of view, but it goes for anyone. You know, you treat yourself in a way that you want others to treat you, and to
Mhm.
make sure that, you know, you carry yourself to a certain standard, that you're still able to do all the things you want to accomplish, do it in a way that you want, or that you set for yourself, but also making sure that others treat you with respect while you're on the journey of completing those things.
Yes. Again, just another example of you having tools and strategies that when you go out into this real world again and you're going to be on your own, you know how to implement those strategies in a way. Again, like you said, you remained respectful, but you made sure that you were advocating for yourself. And that's something that everybody does not have, that level of self-control and that level of that mentality to understand there's still a way that I can do this in a respectful manner, so that I end up growing, you end up growing, and like you said, hopefully there becomes change. And because of the way I brought it to you and to try to enlighten you, then you change your behavior because of that. So I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that. Again, you are wise beyond your years. And again, I cannot, just sing your praises enough. So I am honored to have you on here. This just does my heart so good to be able to put out this kind of content and showcase young people who are modeling the behaviors that we swear up and down we don't see. We don't see
Mm-hmm.
it because we choose not to put it out. It is there. You all are there, and I love being able to make sure the world knows that you're there. All right, so you just mentioned high school a lot. So let's go in and let's talk a little bit about your high school journey. Let's start with your story. What would be one word that you would use to describe your whole entire those 4 years, that high school journey, and why did you choose that word?
Um, I'll probably choose the word enlightening,
Mm,
because a lot of what I went through. Okay, so going into high school, came out of COVID.
mhm.
Lost the year of social interaction, and now we're in a place where there's a whole bunch of teenagers who don't know how to talk to each other. So,
Right.
being in ninth grade, that was like the adjustment period where we're kind of getting back to, where we used to be, in seventh grade. Well, at least for my class 2025. But that year was like an adjustment period, and learning how to navigate high school, the coursework, the different
Mhm.
relationships you're going to be forming for the next 4 years. And so then, sophomore year comes, and then junior year, and that's when you have to start actually paying attention to what you're doing, especially when it comes to like extracurriculars,
Yes.
um, what you want to do when you get older, um, and then thinking about your future overall. But then also during that period, I learned a lot of life lessons. So like, the story I just talked about previously was, learning how to navigate certain interactions that you also need to like learn how to level yourself in, to make sure you don't say anything that you don't mean, but also learning how to navigate personal relationships and like friends, and possibly losing friends along the way because they may not be beneficial to you.
Mhm.
But then junior year comes, and you're like, okay, like college is about to come around the corner. You start to get serious, taking the SAT, starting to take more challenging classes like APs and dual enrollment. And then senior year comes, and then now it's like that period of like, whoa, there's a lot going on right now. Let me learn how to reel it back in, so I know how to navigate college now. Because you know this my second semester of senior year, that was a long semester, but it ended so quickly. But
Mhm.
throughout that whole semester, I learned a lot of things about people. I learned a lot of things about academics, how that will affect me in the future. I learned a
Mhm.
lot of things about college, and starting your freshman year and what you need to expect. So yeah, enlightening would be the best word, because I learned so much that I didn't know prior. And then going through certain experiences, I learned how to navigate a lot of difficult things, but also I was able and grateful to I was grateful to learn those things at that time instead of later in life.
Exactly. Again, in that nurturing environment where you have people at school that you can rely on, as well as people at home, because the lessons that you're learning right now are going to be the life lessons that help you navigate so well on that college campus, because you're going to notice and you're going to see that not everybody was able to experience that and grow that way while in high school. And sometimes that is the difference between them being able to matriculate all the way through college, graduate on time, and do what they're supposed to. And those students who have a lot of bumps along the road their freshman year and sometimes end up damaging their GPA, which puts their scholarships in jeopardy, their SAP, satisfactory academic progress rating, all of that could damage, again, the financial aid that they receive. So I'm glad that you've had that support system. I'm glad that you had those experiences while in high school, because it's just going to make you that more determined and prepared to come out in force. So again, great term, enlightenment. That was a great one to be able to and choose for your story, and you expanded on it so well to help us understand why you chose enlightenment. Okay, so you talked about one of the challenges that you faced in high school. So what kept you motivated? Even during your senior year, there's so much that's going on, like you said, especially spring semester, where it seems like it's the same amount of time, but it seems like everything is in warp speed. Everything is going so fast. What kept you motivated through the scholarship applications, the college applications, the letters of recommendation, the APs, the dual enrollment, the extracurriculars? What kept you focused on continuing and pushing through, even through the challenging moments?
I would say my parents, number one, my mother especially, helping me with all of my college recommendations, all of my college applications, making sure everything was submitted on time, for when everything was due, because it was also an adjustment for her, because when she talked about her experience applying to college, she's always saying, all I did was pick a college out of a brochure and that's where I went. So it's a lot different now, having to go through the Common App and having to go through all these other platforms trying to choose what college you want to go to, and you have to do all these applications online. So my mother was a big help in supporting me during that time and making sure that I was staying on the right path. And my dad was great as an emotional support, being there if I needed to talk to him about anything, but also my friends. And I was grateful enough to make friends or be in friend groups that were productive, and we all kind of helped each other through the process. Like if we all needed to review an essay, one of our friends' essays, they were like, "Okay, can you help me read it?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And I'll help them tweak it a little bit, if need be. But we were all pretty supportive of each other, and if we needed any emotional advice, or if we needed to just a shoulder to cry on, we'd be there for each other. So that's one thing I will say about high school, is that make sure not everybody has that experience, but make sure make friends who will be there for you in the long run, and not necessarily friends who are only there for a reason and a season. So just make sure you choose your people wisely.
Very good advice. Very good advice. And I mean, there's some adults out here that still need to use that advice. So very good, again, that you have that at this age. So you mentioned your mom and your dad. What advice would you give parents who are navigating with those students who were juniors last year, and it just starts to go so fast? Like Common App opens August 1st. Everything just really starts to roll. What advice do you have for parents who are going to have to support their seniors throughout this year, so that they hopefully can get exactly to where you are with this? Your school, your financial aid is taken care of, and everything is the way you need it to be. What advice would you give to parents right now as they navigate this time?
I would say form relationships with the counselors and make sure your students are doing the same thing, because the counselors at my school are very helpful in making sure that, if I needed a recommendation that was due the next day, they'll be there to do it, but only because I formed that relationship with them first. Um, Making sure that they're involved in the college application process, because I know sometimes us kids, we're not paying attention to like how much something costs, because during this college journey, I never knew how much out of state tuition is or would
Mhm.
be. And, seeing those numbers, it's like, oh, I can't pay that. So, and, making sure that you're there for your student to help them understand that you need to look at certain things before choosing different colleges, and just
Mhm.
being there if they need help with anything. Because, it's a lot of paperwork you also need to sign with like FERPA and,
Yep.
FAFSA and a whole bunch of other stuff that you need to fill out.
So
But,
acronym. Mhm.
but yeah, just making sure that you're there for your student, form relationships with your counselors, and do your own research too, and talk to parents who have been through the process already, because that was also helpful. Talking to some of my, parents' friends who just had college graduates or just had high school graduates, and who understand the process in a different perspective or a different lens, because they also may have resources or opportunities that you didn't know about before.
Correct. And that's one of the things, again, I tried to make sure my students understood, is to form those parent networks early. There's a lot of parents who feel like, once we get you to college, okay, you're good. I got my empty nest here, you in college, whatever. But it's very important that the parents understand their student is going to go to college, but they're going to college too. They need to be active and involved all through those 4 years, not necessarily being helicopter parents and always, in your child's business, but forming a network where you all are going up and checking on your kids, the parents, getting a group together. If I can't go up this week, I can send my care package, or, check in on my child to make sure, see if they need anything. All right, we're going up this weekend. We're going to ride together. So again, forming those networks to find, again, support system. So it was a support system for you at high school, but when they do that, they also form a support system for you on the college campus as well. So parents need to stay heavily involved through the senior year, of course, all the way through high school, but really involved. So that, again, I've had several parents who thought everything was together. And then when it came to that price tag, just like you were saying, well into the year, then it was like, oh, we can't do that. But those are conversations, if and you're talking and you're staying on it regularly throughout the school year, then the cost and you can make that decision a lot sooner. So I applaud your parents for being heavily involved, your mom for being in there with the dates, taking care of anything that, is coming up and reminding you of the deadline. So I definitely applaud you and your parents for this journey that y'all took together, because that's what it really needs to be. It needs to be a journey together. So, okay, so you gave some advice for parents. What do you want high school principals and counselors to know about what students really need? What would you
Mm-hmm.
tell high school principals and counselors?
I know I suggested this. My mother and I suggested this to our principal and counselor. But making a senior checklist that you can introduce to possibly the rising juniors, so they understand how the process of college works before it gets to the August time. Because I
Mhm.
know for myself and some of my peers, we did not know what Common App was until August. We didn't know about how to write an essay. We didn't know how to do a lot of the things that are needed, that you need to know at least by October. So, you know, I suggest, making that senior checklist, whether that be making sure that all of your stuff is done for, the teachers that you want to get your recommendations from, knowing what scholarships you want to apply to this upcoming year, knowing how to write a college essay, knowing how to research about different colleges, making sure that you're making the most responsible choices possible. But but also making sure that you're giving a lot of your time to this, because it's a lot of work, I know, especially for schools that have, at least 300 graduating, in the next, graduating class. So it can be a lot of work, but I think making sure that you also talk to counselors in other counties, to see what they're doing, or also just making sure that you keep up with the students to make sure that they're okay, because there can be a lot of instances where, you think that one student is okay, based on like the majority,
Right.
and then, it ends up being May, and then you're looking like, oh, so you haven't completed anything, you haven't finished any application. This the time is running out, and so now this student is unprepared to go to college, or where the workforce or the military or whatever they choose to go, do after high school. So I think just making sure that you put all your time and effort, or a majority of your time and effort, into those students who are about to graduate, but also making sure that you're preparing the students behind them for what is upcoming. So
Yeah, so exactly. So I like what you're saying. So if I know this plan before I leave my junior year, there's so much that I could be doing over the summer. There's so much
mhm.
that I could be doing. And again, when you say Common App opens August 1st, then I'm ready to go because I've been working and I've been preparing. I might not have it all done, but I would be in a much better place than just figuring out what Common App is on August 1st, the day that we come back. So I definitely get what you're understanding and what you're saying, and I understand that wholeheartedly. So proper preparation. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So we talked a little bit about scholarships and things like that, and that cost, and where you were weighing out what it costs to go to this college versus that college. Let's talk about that actual cost of going to college. What did you discover as you were researching and applying to different colleges? And how will you be covering the expenses at NCAT? What did you do, I guess, when you found out exactly how much it was going to be? And how did you navigate that to make sure that like you were going to school debt free? How did you handle all of that?
Yeah, so during my college application process, I learned about different colleges and their honors colleges. So I applied to North Carolina A&T's honors college, and I went through a whole process of interviews and essay writing and recommendations, and I ended up being chosen for their honors college, and they pay for everything. So I got a full ride to North Carolina A&T because of that. And so I didn't know that a whole bunch of other schools had honors colleges too, where they would give you a full ride, if you just, do a couple of interviews, which is standard, for any selection process. But, learning about that process was really key into making sure that I didn't have to pay as much money as somebody else, did. But um researching about the college is very important, but also making sure that you understand that, or having that realistic conversation with your parents or your students to make sure that that you going to this college or attending this institution is going to be a lot of money, and that you may need to rethink your college choice, or we may have to talk about loans, or you getting a job in college, or you getting a job during the summer, so that way you're able to pay some of the tuition or some of the room and board or whatever fees. But
Mm-hmm.
also making sure that you're looking at a lot of scholarships prior to your senior year, so maybe like during their junior year or during your summer leading up to senior year, because a lot of scholarships are um open to rising juniors or seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it's all about research, honestly, just making sure that you understand that college costs a lot of money now, especially with inflation, and just looking at everything that's going on now, it probably won't be going down for a minute.
Right.
So and making sure that you understand the difference between a public and private institution, and knowing that private institutions aren't necessarily covered by state um funded things. So like in Georgia we have Hope and Zell Miller. Not
Yes.
every state has that, and
Mm-hmm.
not every school covers that. So it just understanding that research is important, and making sure that you have those realistic conversations with your family members about paying for certain things, because not everything is free.
Right. That realistic conversation is clutch. It is key. Many seniors come in and all they really know is the top name HBCUs or the ESPN schools, and there's a disconnect in the mindset that many of the kids will get into a lot of these colleges. They've done what they're supposed to do and they'll get accepted. And for them to be able to put out all these social media posts about all the schools they were accepted to, I have to really work with the mindset and say, that's great, but how are you going to pay for it? That's the biggest conversation. It's one thing to get in, but it's a totally different conversation about how are you going to get in, pay to stay in, and graduate with the lowest amount of student loan debt in 4 years. That's the biggest conversation that has to be had. And like you said, you have to have that early on, and you got to prepare our juniors, our junior parents, our senior parents, everybody needs to know that so much sooner. It's more important to understand how you're going to pay for the school, not so much as, how many can you get accepted to. So yeah, that's one of those sticky situations and the gap that we're really trying so hard to bridge. So that's again why I have you all on here as seniors. You just fresh came out of this situation. So who better than you all to help enlighten everybody else that is going through it? Because people, the teachers, the counselors, people like me, the career coach in the school, yes, sometimes they don't hear us, but I know they will hear you all a lot better and a lot easier, and they'll be able to understand, well, she, just went through this, and I followed her journey and I know her. So let me, take that to heart and really pay attention. So again, this has so many angles that I'm trying to tackle. And I appreciate you all being willing to come on and share your stories so much. So, is there any one scholarship? I know you talked about the honor scholarship, but has there anything else that really made a difference and helped set you apart in choosing to go to NCAT? Did you get any of those individual scholarships, like the community organizations? What all did you apply for, I guess, and which ones were you able to secure? That kind of sort of, again, I try to make people understand there is institutional money that's going to have to go to that institution and pay for that. But there's so many other scholarships that will write that check to you that helps you fund all of the other activities, dorm room, transportation. Do you have any other ones that you can tell people, say, hey, don't forget to apply for this one or that one, and make sure you do, those applications?
Yeah, so one tip that I did receive while during the whole college process was don't focus so much on those big name scholarships, like the Coke, which is, Coke scholarship, but it's helpful to apply if you want to, but small scholarships are also really important too, because not many people apply for them. And so I know for me, I also applied to a lot of the fraternities and sororities in the areas, so the different chapters for any sorority or fraternity. It doesn't matter the affiliation, of your parents, but making sure that you look at those different organizations that you're a part of. So let's say if you're a part of Jack and Jill, if you're a part of Girl Scouts, if you're a part of FBLA, all these organizations that you are part of at school or outside of school, make sure that you look into their scholarships as well, because a lot of the things that you do also will look good on their applications as well.
All right, so tell me, what's something that you learned about yourself during high school that even surprised you, that you didn't know about yourself?
Probably how persistent I am. Just making sure that I know that college recommendation process is a lot of work, making sure that you stay on top of those teachers, because it's hard because everybody's asking the same teachers for recommendations, and making sure that everybody's applying to the same scholarships, everybody's doing the same thing at the same time, so it can definitely get challenging when you're trying to stand out from the crowd. But for me, I had to make sure that I was persistent in what my goal was, and making sure that I was successful in everything that I did, but also making sure that I stayed on top of what I needed to do to make sure that all my teachers that I asked recommendations for, hey, did you turn it in? Did you make sure that you hit the submit button? Can you send it to me on an email? Asking counselors too, because they're handling at least, I don't know, 100 other students at the same time. So, things can get lost in translation, which is understandable, but making sure that you are constantly reminding people that, what you have is important. And it kind of goes back to make sure, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, placing yourself at on a high pedestal where you understand your worth and understanding that, what you're doing is also important. So, things take time, but also understanding that if you need something done, you need to get it done at that moment.
Right. I like that. So let's go into a little bit of advice for the high school students. Looking at you where you are now, if you could go back and give your freshman self some advice, what advice would you give your freshman self?
Be confident in yourself. You
Mhm.
know, during freshman year, it was the weird time after COVID. So, everybody, we all look strange. We're starting high school, coming straight out of middle school. So, um, I wasn't as, confident in what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be.
Mhm.
And, during that time, it's an adjustment period. So you really don't, you're not thinking about anything except, just getting through your freshman year. But, just understand that if you want to get something done, you have the full ability to do it. And if you need resources or help, be confident in asking people. If you want to start a club at your school, feel free to ask a teacher, like, hey, do you want to sponsor my club? Here's my idea. Or if you want to start a community service project, if you want to, just do anything that you want to put your mind to, it's okay. And be confident in what you're saying, because if you believe in something, then you obviously have the ability to make sure that it comes to fruition.
Nice, very nice, very nice. All right, so let's say we have this senior who we got a rising senior, and they sent you a DM and they were like, "Hey, I saw your podcast, and here I am. I'm this senior, and I don't know where to start. Can you give me some advice on what do I do? Where do I start? What would you tell them?"
um Probably start off with saying, like, what are your interests? So, like, what do you like to do? Because one thing I learned throughout the whole process is that colleges like to see what your interests are, and they like to see you go on a path that kind of focuses on the that kind of focus on those interests that you have. So, like, if your interest is art and you want to do it for a living, then start applying to a lot of art colleges or apply to colleges that have great art programs, and join clubs that also deal with art. And even though it may be kind of late in the game, kind of gauge of, like, maybe I can go to community college for my first year and then transfer, because a lot of people do that. Like, it's nothing wrong with that. And if even though you're starting late, don't compare yourself to other people during that process, but just talk about, like, what you're interested in, because if you're interested in something, then you're more likely to be a lot more active in doing something in that field. So yeah, interest is the main part, but also making sure that I tell them to be productive, and not don't slack on it, because it'll pile up eventually, when doing
Yes.
all those things for college, and it's not even in your forefront, and you're kind of just mixed to trying to get everything done at the same time. So
So, if you could redesign senior year for everyone to actually prepare students for real life, what would you change or what would you add?
I would make sure that my school offered classes that kind of prepare you for college in a way. So whether that be learning how to write college essays, or you like kind of like embed a curriculum, kind of maybe in your English class, where that kind of taught you how to write a specific essay about a specific topic. You could do like weekly topics, like, I don't know, what's one experience that you went through that kind of changed your life, and then you can write an essay on that, and it could help you with what maybe like a common app essay, or an essay that one of the colleges may ask you in your application. But also have a class that's tailored to you know, being financially responsible, maybe learning how to budget, understanding the importance of having a plan after high school, whether it be college or, going into the trade or going to the military, but just understanding all the options that you have.
Right.
So, because, college isn't for everybody, which is fine. And, a lot of people may want to go into a certain trade, or maybe actually want to go into the military. So, understanding all your options, keeping it open, but also understanding that you need to have a plan and not just do everything, once you get to that point. So,
I like that. I like that redesign. That class is definitely needed. All right, so let's talk about your next. So we're done with high school. You are preparing for NCAT. For the next 12 months, what goals are you setting for yourself?
so, um, I've had this talk with my parents, because most of them went to HBCUs, and so you can easily get distracted. So my parents, told me that, for these next 12 months, have fun, because it's your freshman year, like, have fun exploring it. It's a new experience for everybody, but also be focused on what I need to do. So I plan to join a good amount of organizations just to see like what the culture is at the school, but also getting my face out there just in case if I want to join other or like run for leadership positions in the future. But yeah, join different organizations, making sure that you are proactive in your classes. Um, Maybe looking at different community service opportunities because that always looks good on your resume, but also it's helpful for the community too. But just making sure that I put myself out there for these next 12 months and making sure that I'm proactive in school, but also looking at all the opportunities and taking advantage of all of them. Because your freshman year also goes by fast in college, and making sure that you have a plan for the summer.
Yes.
So yeah, making sure that you are actively looking at that resume, making sure that you're constantly putting stuff down,
Mhm.
and again, just making sure that I'm productive throughout the entire time.
Really nice. I think again, you just have a great outlook. Again, both your parents, like you said, went to HBCU, so they know the organizations. They know how you build relationships on those campuses. And if leadership is in your future, and that's what you want, you definitely have to have the networking capabilities. You got to get in touch with the right people, and they have to see you in action on those campuses and being a part of the culture. So you're definitely on the right track with that. One last thought before we go into the little quick round. What's the single piece of advice you hope every listener takes away from your story?
Um, let's see. Uh, Probably know your limit.
Mm,
So that could go either way, like personally or academically. So like, personally understanding, you know, how much I can take on at one time and knowing that, you know, I don't have I can't do everything. And
right.
that it's okay to take breaks for yourself. But also academically, you may want to take all the hardest classes you can in the world. But at the same time, if you can't handle it, don't do it. But that could go for somebody who's in the professional workforce, or just doing anything in life, understanding that you need to understand where you need to set that bar at, and then if you kind of exceed it, you need to kind of take some things away to make sure that you are still kind of leveling yourself out. So
Very good advice. Very good advice. All right, let's go on this round robin round. Let's see if we can get some quick answers to you from you. Just again, let us know just a little bit more about you. What's your favorite high school memory?
probably senior prom.
Oh, what
Yes,
was your
that's
theme?
say it one more time.
What was your school's theme?
Enchanted forest, but nobody really followed it.
Okay. But I bet the decorations were beautiful.
Yes, yes.
They were. All right. What's one teacher or staff member who really made a difference in your life and why?
Probably my high school pre-calc teacher, Miss Taw. She was really sweet. She was also our junior SGA sponsor. So I got to work with her a lot, but also be in class with her. But she was really sweet, and she did a lot of my college recommendations. But
Mhm.
she kind of made a difference because she showed me that, it's it was kind of inspiring to see her work because she put a lot of time and effort into us, but
Mhm.
also made sure that she showed that she cared. So like in any instance where we needed something, she made sure that it got done, whether that be for SGA or like if we needed help in class, she was always there, and she was really sweet. So I'm gonna miss her. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's very nice. What is the biggest thing you'll miss about high school?
um Probably the amount of support I had, because not saying I won't receive support in college, but it's a lot different. Like you're more independent in college, and you
Mhm.
can't necessarily rely on every teacher. You can't rely on your parents all that much because you're not going to see them every day. So probably the amount of support I had in high school And I would see the same people every single day. I was seeing the same teachers every single day. So, probably that consistency, but college will be fine. But I think that's like one thing I will miss about high school.
Yeah, I know you're going to be just fine. All right, so the last one, I love to ask this question just to see where your minds go. So if your life were a movie, what would the title be?
Let me see. Maybe I'm taking inspiration from a movie, but maybe the curious case of curiosity, maybe.
Okay, explain that a little bit.
It probably didn't make any sense, but I'm trying to think. Maybe because I've always been curious about a lot of things, and it kind of helped me, lead to somewhere where I wanted to be. Because being curious about politics, it kind of led me to, maybe I want to do that as a career, or being curious about art and delving into that a lot more. It also led me to important topics like arts advocacy and arts education, the importance of that, and how that kind of fused together with politics. But I think, yeah, that's probably what the movie title would be.
That's a very good title, and you explained it very well.
Oh, thank you.
So the last question, though, this is in life and in general after college, and you're in your grown-up life. Mm-hmm. What's the thing you would like to be remembered for?
Probably my impact on the community, because since I wanted to do politics and possibly become a senator, I want people to remember me by the changes I was able to make in our government, but also in the lives of everyday people, because just seeing how the government is affecting our current state. It's a lot of things going on, but there's a lot of people who are in need of help, whether that be financially or socially. But I want people to remember me by she was somebody who actually cared for the people, and she actually made sure that she dedicated her life to making sure that everyone else was okay.
I love that. And I love NCAT for you. And I love the journey that you're about to embark on. I can't wait to keep up with you and just see just how far you go and the social impact that you make at NCAT, back here in the Atlanta area, and again, when you become senator. So I'm going to hold you to that, and I know it's going to come to pass. So again, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the podcast tonight. Thank you so very much. And I hope, again, nothing but the best for you in this journey that you're about to embark on. So again, for everybody that's listening, thank you all for tuning in, watching on the YouTube channel. Coach D wants to know. Share it, like it, subscribe, send it out. And again, if you know anybody that would love to be on this show with me, please shoot me a DM. We will make sure we set up a time to get it recorded and get it out to the masses. So again, thank you so much for joining in on Coach D Wants to Know.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Coach D Wants to Know. I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and opened up fresh possibilities for the future. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Also, check out the resources available on my website, keystoneinstruction.com. And remember, the journey to success has many paths. Let's make sure every student finds their best fit. Until next time, together we can empower, innovate, and lead one student, one teacher, one leader at a time. See you soon.